Hey everyone, it's Peter Kerr from Rock Daydream Nation, and I've got a special guest to the channel. I've got Jeff Jourard of the Hollywood Stars. How are you, Jeff?
I'm very well, and it's really nice to be here.
Fantastic to have you on. So, the Hollywood Stars have a new album coming out called Starstruck. It's the first album in a considerable period of time. I've listened to it, it's a cracker of an album. Can you please
Thanks.
describe to the viewers what you can expect from this album? Describe the album.
Well, it looks like this, and sound-wise, I'd say it's somewhere between glam and classic rock. It rocks pretty hard. Um, there's a within that accent, there's quite a bit of variety. Um, some of the stuff is from long ago. Some of it was conjured up just weeks ago or months ago at this point, and it's new to the band. So I think even though the band started out in the glam era, they've never exactly been glam. They were pretty much hard rock,
Yep.
classic rock, and that's what they are now. I mean, it's guitar based, guitar oriented, pretty hard hitting.
Yeah.
I imagine you'll play an excerpt from it at some point.
I used to say you were afraid to come out and play. But no, I didn't know you weren't alone. You weren't alone. You're a taxi driver taking me for a ride. You're a taxi driver, yeah.
Absolutely. And when I listen to it, it's got a lot of power pop smarts to it. Would you say that's a pretty fair description? There's a lot of power pop in this album.
Yes, high power pop.
Hi-
You know,
High energy power pop.
yeah. I mean, you might say XTC is power pop, right, or
Yeah.
just straight pop. We hit a bit harder than that. Maybe somewhere between XTC and Steppenwolf, maybe
Yep. Yep.
in there somewhere. Would you say?
Yeah. Was it a long recording process
Oh
or
no, not
pretty
at all.
just in and out sort of thing?
Pretty much in and out. Uh, in the session before I arrived, they were very well rehearsed, and they were talking about, we knocked out 6 songs in 4 days, and I thought, well, I hope we can, match that with me in the band, and we did. We rehearsed and rehearsed and rehearsed, and we worked out all our parts. We went in over a long weekend, Friday to Monday, and we knocked them out. Most of what's on the record was played live. There's a few little overdubs. One or two things were doubled. I think there was a hiccup or a mistake that was covered over with an overdub, but it's pretty much the way we played it. And great thing about that is if you like the way that sounds, that's what we sound like live because that's pretty much how we played it.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, you've recorded with Petty, you recorded with the Motels, and I would imagine the recording process was a bit more than a couple of days. Um, did you enjoy the process of just going in and just banging the tunes and that's a press
boy,
really
I sure
quickly?
did. Yeah, I really did. Um, it's pretty unusual now. Everything since like the siren call of Pro Tools, just is really seductive to like perfect this and perfect that and remove that glitch and that's a little bit pitchy and it's really hard to resist and most people don't. And we're so used to a completely polished end result that it loses something that sort of living, breathing feeling. And it was really nice to play mostly live. We did play the songs end to end with all the parts in place. The only parts that were added were like little sweeteners. It'd be nice if that little phrase had two guitars instead of one, but we played it, you know. Yeah, it was really nice to record in the old school style.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
a huge fan of Stax and Sun and the labels that basically had artists in there and just caught what they did. So I'm a big fan of that, and we did essentially that. Really happy with it.
Less is more, isn't it?
Yep. And if you come in with more, then more is more.
Absolutely. So you came into the band late in the piece. So tell us, what did you bring to this record? Did you do any sort of special arrangements? Yeah, just tell the viewers what did you bring to the process of this album?
I tend towards arranging. Um, the songs that were already done were, they were verbatim, so we did them as presented. The ones that I was involved in, they mostly got fleshed out in the rehearsal room. So it was carte blanche to see to add. And so I did little things, like it'd be cool if we started this way or different tempo. And um, everybody in the band's pretty experienced. They made similar suggestions. And so we kind of just banged it out. Whoever had the strongest idea got their idea, and it stayed in the song. My invitation was to come into this band and just play rhythm guitar, like Johnny Thunders, or
Mm,
I think of another example. But the decorative stuff had already been claimed and spoken for by George Keller, who got me in the band through an interesting side story, which I've told before. But um, I'll try and be brief. I was looking for a demo of a certain type of pedal, and I wasn't looking to join a third band. I was already in two. And I was looking for a pedal that would make my life a little easier between two bands. And I found this great demo that was just what I was looking for. And after a short time, I was going, never mind the pedal. This guy's really interesting. And so I contacted him, and it turned out we were both crazy about gear and just nerded out, geeked out like crazy on this pedal and that pedal and guitars and blah blah blah. And that turned into, well, we should really meet. Why don't we get together? And it turned out we lived just blocks apart. I mean, I could walk to his house from here. And while I was there and we were playing, after he watched me play for a while, he said, I wonder if you'd be interested to join this band that I just joined. We need a rhythm player, and if you're willing to do it, like, I know who you are. I know who you are. But if you'd be willing to just play rhythm, I'd love to have you in the band. I think you'd like it, and it would be fun. So I did, and it was fun. And I was willing to join, and they asked me back. And on the second rehearsal, it was a photo session. So that's when I realized, like, I guess I'm in the band.
yeah. So
So
you're a pretty mean lead guitarist. I've seen a lot of your work. When you're on stage, does that sort of lead guitarist gene come out, and you want to, put a bit of flash, but you're content to sit back and just do the rhythm?
I'm actually really enjoying playing the rhythm. It's so much less work. I always kind of envied the guys that just sort of uh, could get lost in the rhythm
Mm,
and like soak in it and ride that wave and not have to constantly be thinking about the next exit, the next turn, the next variation, and all the tone changes that come with it, because that was always my style, and
yep.
I just gave myself too much work. So this is like almost a vacation. I love it.
The Gainesville music scene in Florida. Do you encountered a very young Tom Petty?
Oh, well, it's, small town. Everybody knew each other pretty quickly, if for no other reason than there was just one main music store in town, and musicians just naturally gravitated there just to hang out, because there were going to be other musicians. And, you had no intention of buying anything, but it was sort of like a clubhouse, like especially on a Saturday. So, you saw everybody, Don Felder, Tom Petty, uh, Mark Pinsky, people who went on to work for years for Frank Zappa. Just names that were local names. Don Felder was always very good. He was several cuts above us. He could really play, and he knew jazz chords and stuff, and we didn't know any of that stuff. Tom was just another face. He was in the Epics, which was like all of us, cover band for bars and dances and stuff. Unremarkable at the time. He played
No
bass.
star power. No, you didn't detect any star power in that. With
Zero.
Tom.
I mean, if anything, he was a bit droopy. That came out later.
Yeah.
He would get a little bit excited during a hot tune. We all did, because usually we'd had a couple beers, and loosened up. But no, Tom was just around, and he had his own band. The Epics became something else, and then he started Mudcrutch. I was in a much harder hitting band, and I thought they were a bit, he loved that country rock hybrid, and to me that just seemed a step in the wrong direction, because the country music was the theme music for like the rednecks, who were very anti-hippie, maybe equivalent to sort of the MAGA mindset now in the States. And it just was, we don't really want to go over there. We want to go with the new stuff, which is Zeppelin and MC5 and Traffic, stuff like that. And so my band was more like that. And so I didn't really pay all that much attention to Tom, except that he was a familiar face around town. We'd say, "Hi, Tom. Hi, Jeff." That's about it.
So you were effectively a heartbreaker. How did you get into the Tom Petty fold? Explain that to the viewers.
Well, in the first place, the Gainesville music scene is really incestuous. People played in different combinations, joined and left bands. And I came out to LA in the end of '72. Mudcrutch came out not long after, 6 months maybe, something like that, in '73. And, I didn't see much of them until they broke up. As a side note, I was living with Stan Lynch's sister. She came out we'd been pretty serious boyfriend and girlfriend, but it seemed like it was going to have to end when I left for LA, and she went to upstate New York for college, so it was very tearful. And she announced she was coming out to live with me. Great. Okay. And then Stan came out shortly after. After Mudcrutch broke up, most of the people in the band went their separate ways and did their own demos. And Benmont Tench, the keyboard player, he was doing demos at Village Recorders, pretty prestigious place. I still don't know how he got time there with a zero budget, which we all had. But somehow Stan was there, and he called me up and he said, "We're having a blast, man. It's everybody from Gainesville. You should get down here tonight and bring a guitar." So I did, and we did Benmont's demos, and they somehow got to Tom, and he loved what he was hearing. So he basically stole that band for his sessions. He was not interested in a band. He wanted to do only a solo record because he was sick of all the drama that had broken up Mudcrutch. He had enough of that. And he just wanted backing musicians for his solo trip. Is that a doggy back there?
Yeah, it is.
Anywho, I'm getting long-winded here. Denny Cordell, the record company president, impressed on him that, even though, it it's still a solo act. You're the only one signed to my label. I think it'll go over better with the public if there's a band with a star in it, like Bob Seger or that sort of thing, than just a star alone. And so he agreed. But the thing was, behind the scenes, we were all calling each other, going, "Hey, feels like a band to me. This is like the old days." Tom wasn't interested, and then Denny leaned on him, and he decided to go with the conceit that it was a band, and it actually was. It became the Heartbreakers, which was a great band. A great band, the same way the Attractions were the best band I think that Elvis Costello ever had.
Yep.
So much more than just a little combo to back him up. So that's how I got in. It was a side door from a demo session.
And what a lot of folk probably don't realize or should realize is that five songs on this.
I'm on 5 songs. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a player.
Yep.
My parts are on there.
Mm.
Also, that's my motorcycle jacket on the cover. I never get tired of pointing out. I brought some pictures from the formation of the band. Mm.
Very good.
Mm. And here we all are working on some kind of a song.
Yep.
What? And here's the band.
Nice.
Yeah.
So when you're playing, did you contribute any arrangement ideas, or was it really Tom's show? He sort of ruled the roost, and this is how it's going to be.
No, he's not like that. He writes the song, chords, music, melody, words. I speak like he's still here, and I continue to do so. He has like pretty clear picture of the gist of the song and the effect he wants it to have, but not the details and nuts and bolts. One of the things I liked best about what he would do is he would play the song, and there would be such an obvious gap where you would go that he didn't have to tell you. You would just hear the empty spot, and you put your thing in there, and like nobody had to say anything. And it was really just a question of, did my part work better than Mike's part? And very often it was Mike. He worked with him much longer than me, but a lot of my parts are on there. I'm Mystery Man. I was properly in the band. They had to change the album cover after I was out.
Yeah.
Because my picture was on there. And then
Well, I noticed you got a heartfelt thanks in the notes, but did you ever sort of angle for a little bit of more of a playing credit, or you just let it go?
I let it go. I mean, I took it really hard when it happened. I mean, these are all my friends from home. It was like the sort of bro vibe, and it seemed to be a betrayal. And besides, anyone who I would have started a band with after that was in the band, was gone. So I was in a tailspin for quite a while.
Because you were about to go to the band was about to go to the UK, weren't they? Because they were breaking it big.
Well, yeah, because there was no noise happening over here. It just crickets, And Denny, being English, he knew that if the band went over there, it would be an American band, not just a band, but a band from America. So
bit exotic,
whole different flavor. And it worked, they got all kinds of tremendous press, and he made sure to send all that back and promote it. And when they came back, they were pretty warmly embraced.
Yes.
And right before going is when I got cut loose, because obviously they were sussing up what the expenses were going to be, and how are we going to deal with a band that big on a no budget. And I wasn't essential. Mike was essential. The way it turned out, I was decorative, but I wasn't required. So,
did he articulate why he cut you loose, or was it just sort of saying,
He did.
Yeah,
And it shocked everyone in the band. They didn't know this was coming. He just called me
yeah.
up one afternoon and said, in essence, this is really hard to do. And I
Mm,
hate to do this, but, you know, um, uh, you're, you're not totally happy in the band, which was true. I was frustrated trying to find a spot for myself and
mm,
like feeling like a fifth wheel. And if time goes on, it's going to get even harder and more sticky. So we just have to, let you go. So that was his reasoning, and it's true enough. I just was hoping that the brotherhood thing would have counted for more. But he was a very determined, very dedicated, very focused person, and taking myself out of the equation, he had to do that. Sure, he did.
yeah.
Yeah.
What's your feelings about the album? Do you think you still ever go back and listen to it, or?
Quite a bit, yeah. And
Mm,
plus, I can't help it hear it on the radio. I mean, a lot of those songs are heavily played all the time.
absolutely.
Yeah.
American Girl, that was just a
American Girl.
breakout of you. I heard a rumor that you didn't like that song. Is that true or not?
I didn't like it. No, it seemed strident and too one-dimensional. I liked the more moody orchestral things that had like at least two layers to them. Like Mystery Man. I love Mystery Man. Sorry, my part is on there. It's very minimal, but I love the sound of that song, that recording. Yeah, I didn't hear American Girl. I just, I played my part, but um, didn't, it's like next.
Were you surprised it became a bit of a hit of this album?
No, it was the bicentennial. It was the 200th anniversary of independence. It was recorded on the 4th of July weekend, ironically enough, of 1976, the bicentennial. So it seemed like it had a shot. It was topical and timely. I thought it was a little too much derivative of the Byrds, that they might get criticized for that. But no, people loved it. You know, uh, I like it a lot more now because I was I would say my checklist for what I like was a lot narrower then. I I hear it differently now, and it really moves along. It's really got that great beat.
Absolutely. And it's completely different to the rest of the album. It's kind of an outrider, and it's the last song on the album. So the sequencing is quite unique on this album. You've got this track right at the end of the album that's kind of an outrider, isn't it?
They might have done that in case they thought it was a deal breaker. They definitely sweated the order for a long time. That was not a slapdash effort by any means. So it may have. I'll never know if it was put there as like a cliffhanger for what comes next, or if it was just safer to put it at the end in case that would put people off if it was at the beginning. I'll never
Yeah.
know.
Because in the 80s, they did a lot of top loading. All the hits were in side one. It was so heavy with the hits. But in the 70s, I think there was a little, I don't know, a bit more thought, and they'd kind of spread it out, wouldn't they, Jeff?
Well, you had the classic FM radio that was so eclectic. They might even play Frank Sinatra
Mm.
on the back of Blue Cheer. It's like a wide diet. So it wasn't strange to have a lot of different moods on one album.
You left the band, or you're not in the band, and there was another band that you were targeting or wanted to join, Martha
Yes,
Davis and the Motels. So tell us about how you ended up in that band.
I had seen the band um, around town in its first incarnation. Sorry, I have a foggy throat. There's something in the air today. I'd seen the band at a couple of gigs around town, and I especially was attracted by their flyers, their poster. Dean Chamberlain, the uh, main guitar player, he had a graphic style that was really striking, and I wanted to see what this band was all about. So I found a gig, went to see them, And I was knocked out. I just thought they were great. They were everything that was missing from the scene. They seemed to be much more of a New Yorkie uh, yeah, village type of band, uh, Velvet Underground-y kind of thing, than any of the bands in town. So I was a fan, and they seemed to disappear after a while. After I was out of the Heartbreakers, um, and after I sort of got back on my feet, I decided there was three bands in town that I hope to invade. I'm just going to show up and see if anybody's getting ready to leave or something, just on the off chance, because nobody knew me and I wanted to be known. I wanted my name to I wanted at least to have somebody say, "Hi, Jeff," when I walked into a club. I was a complete stranger in town. So Motels topped the list. And I asked around. Nobody knew what had happened to them or where they were. Just they were gone. And somebody told me that they had broken up and all gone back to Berkeley. So it's probably all over. Um, so instead, I joined a band that advertised in the local paper that mentioned Motels as an influence. And so I thought, man, there's a like-minded soul. And it turned out to be Dean Chamberlain. And so um, after a few days of rehearsing with him, I kind of finagled Martha's phone number out of him and uh, called her up. I mean, that was a little bit skanky thing to do, but I was really interested in Martha. And I called her up and just said, "We're starting a band." And she said, "Oh, goody, who are you?" And I kind of trotted out the Tom Petty thing. And she went, "Oh, well, that sounds interesting. Come over." She wanted me to join her existing band, which were all dear friends of hers, and they were all sweet people and nice guys, but they were not focused. They were not thinking like I was thinking, that I want to take this out of the doldrums and really put it up there somewhere. Basically, I wanted to get back on the horse that just threw me. I wanted to get back to the level I left off at. And I also thought that the band would really had a shot at it. I thought that the Motels could occupy a spot somewhere between, I'd say, Blondie, the Cars, and Patti Smith. Pop and Artie, and even Bowie somewhat. And it was a hard sell getting her to betray her friends, but she, crossed her fingers and took a chance that I might know what I'm doing. I didn't really know what I was doing, but I was extremely focused and determined. So much I probably gave myself an ulcer, but I had no life. I did nothing but that. And when that met the circumstances, that in the wake of the Knack, the LA scene was red hot and the record companies were just looking for what might be the next thing. And lucky us, we stepped in to that spotlight and we got snapped up really quick.
And a little album called, The Motels, which is a great album, the first. And there's you.
I thought you might pull that cover out. I want to show you something. Martha wanted to use a postcard from a local motel.
Yep.
And they had used the same postcard since 1956. And she wanted to use this postcard for the cover as is, verbatim, and it was proposed to the art department and they were super enthusiastic until it hit the legal department. And they said, absolutely not, under no circumstances. This guy in the pool, he's probably dead, but his kids will recognize him and come out of the woodwork and sue us. And that lady, we don't know who she is, but sure as you can count on her coming out of the woodwork, or her kids or something. So it was reproduced more or less for that cover you just showed.
I think it's a fantastic album cover.
Red towel, blue bathing suit. I mean,
yes,
they caught it pretty good.
Yeah, but it sums up LA. It's like those LA motor inns. It's sort of got that kind of 70s vibe, or late 60s, 70s vibe. It's a great album cover.
Yeah,
inspired.
the 70s were nostalgic for the 50s. Think of
Mm,
Breakfast in America,
yes,
Supertramp, right?
yes.
That's just a total 50s look.
Mm.
And I think that album cover sort of fit that sentiment.
Tell me about Martha Davis. She's a force of nature. I guess my first question: when you first saw her live, did you know, wow, there's some star power here?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. She had the eye thing down where she was just like, like Theda Bara, yeah, as Cleopatra, that famous
Mm,
picture with the
yes.
eyeliner, and she had that going on, and she stalked the stage, and she was dressed bizarrely. I think she had on like green and black fur colored clam diggers, shorts that end at the knee, um, huge bug sunglasses. Uh, she had this transparent pipe that it was called a light pipe, and had been designed just as a curiosity by Craig Anderton, who's a well-known guy in the effects and electronics world. And if you point it at the light, it's basically like a theremin, that weaselly noise, but it changed and modulated according to how much light was hitting on it. She made a big show out of that. And I was just like, who is this? I love this band. They were kind of raggedy. And
Mm,
oh, yeah, I wanted to join the band. And when I finally met her, I was like kind of stunned because I expected something along the lines of Julie Driscoll, kind of very urban and urbane and bohemian and kind of artsy, and which in the end she was. But when I met her, what I actually found was sort of a hippie in denim bell bottoms with too many dogs and cats and pets around, and the house was a mess, and she had two kids, which I wasn't counting on, and she was kind of a slob. Hope she never hears this. Uh, but she was very clear with her songwriting, um, and very consistent. She was drinking a lot in those days. Um, I think she was stressed out. But what she would do is she would get some wine and get a little bit of a buzz going, and she'd start to free associate and la la la, and
mm,
she would get like the melody going, and then some sounds. She liked alliteration, la la la, and S's like Sally told Sue,
yep.
and and complete control like that. And um, I was always really admired her songwriting because I liked also where we crossed over a lot is she loved musicals, and she loved Elmer Bernstein's music, West Side Story. She liked the 60s girl groups, Chiffons, Crystals. Uh, I liked the early sort of jazz era of Henry Mancini, and Nelson Riddle, and that kind of dramatic orchestral stuff. We we saw eye to eye on that. So, uh, I would try to make arrangements that would frame what she did as starkly as possible without getting in the way, almost
Mm.
like almost like black background. It's really minimal, and almost to our detriment. It made us seem like replaceable. We really weren't. But completely lost my train of thought now.
No,
But
no, you're going well. I'm enthralled. No,
yeah.
um,
Well, so anyway, yeah. The songs were formed that way. I mean, I made
yep,
little contributions. Like I thought that total control with the O sounds was better than complete control. She
yes,
liked consonants, and I liked vowels.
yeah.
Things like
It's really funny you say that because you're sort of downplaying. I just contributed little bits, but that can be major. Just a word here and there is just a monumental change to the whole
yeah,
theme or the vibe of the song.
Well,
Uh,
it was a good detail. I'll own that.
Absolutely. I'll talk about that song in a moment because that's got a special place in this country's heart. But Martha always comes across as somebody quite vulnerable on stage, a little bit of fragility. Is she completely the opposite to that in real life or in the studio, very driven?
Well, she's driven in a way, in a sense. But when you meet her, she's a sweetheart, loves
Mm,
everybody,
yep.
wants to feed everybody. I mean, she just wants to mother you, her demeanor is like shy and giggly,
Mm,
and I mean, just completely disarming. I mean, to be completely blunt, when I first met her, I'd come out of a band that had boys and girls in it, and they got involved with each other, and it always created problems. You know, somebody always had to leave when that relationship broke up, and then we'd have to break somebody new in. So I almost immediately became completely infatuated with her because, and it isn't just me. One of her MOs is just to seduce everybody, and it worked on me as well as anybody else.
and me too.
So
Yeah.
I was feeling it, but based on what I'd seen, I was like, I'm not going there. I'm too serious about the band making it. I'm not going to screw this up. And it did screw it up because, I started getting too bent out of shape over who she was hanging out with and this and that. She was coming on to me pretty hot and heavy in the beginning, very early. And I rebuffed her and like she didn't like that. That was painful. So we pretty much rubbed each other the wrong way, from the start and worked quite a while in,
Yeah.
well, actually in the beginning when it seemed like, I mean, we pretty quickly became popular and played to enthusiastic full houses. So that was
Absolutely.
great. That feeling of going up and up and up. It
Big
was
draw
wonderful.
card. Big draw card in LA, right? In the clubs and
We,
on the
we
West Coast.
we became so after a critical review. We basically couldn't get anybody to come in until Don Snowden wrote the most glowing imaginable review in the free paper 2 days before we played our next gig, and that gig was packed, and everybody talked, and then we started getting that liftoff feeling. That was exciting. Everything was wonderful. And then when we got to a place where we weren't getting along, it was horrible. I mean, best we could manage was to be civil and minimal with each other. Yes, no, yes, I'll be there, that kind of thing.
Right, right.
So
There's a lot of
yeah,
spark. There's a lot of sparks on the album. Played it quite a bit, and your guitar lines. You got very clean guitar lines. Not a lot of fuzz. Is that something that just came about, or was it deliberately
it was half
fashioned in that
deliberate.
way?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was halfway deliberate. Uh, One of the things about the new phase in music that got called new wave was that everyone was sort of collectively sick and tired of what had just come before, which was the overindulgent, heavily distorted guitar solos and the heavy, sludgy heaviness of everything. And the new names were like Tom Verlaine in television, very clean sound. Um, it's probably not a good example, but Bebop Deluxe with they got the job done without all that distortion, and I wanted to be on that train. However, the band when we performed was pretty hot and fat and punchy and big, and uh, even though we played mostly cleanly, it was not a dainty band by any means.
No.
It gutsy kind of fat, hot sound. Problem is the personnel that were producing us. Carter's really not that much to blame. He gave me almost carte blanche because I had such a clear picture of what I wanted that he just let me run with it. The engineer was not on my page. He had his preferences, which was like he was really a jazz and classical and orchestral guy. He made a very sanitary recording, which drove me crazy. It was like a little museum piece under glass. I just where are we? We're not in that little miniature. And the live show continued to be punchy. What I found out years later from Carter, who I continued to have lunch with from time to time, even after I was gone, he said one day, all those little things that drove us crazy about that album, the quietness and the daintiness, the people that never saw the band, that's what they love about it. They think of it as a morning record they can put on in the morning with their coffee. I said, well, I never thought of that, but I can see it that way. But at the time, it was kind of a disappointment.
This album, I think if you were new to it and you played it, Total Control just stands out heads and shoulders.
It did
Tell us
then.
about the genesis of that song and how you recommended the tempo.
Lovely leading question. I can tell you've done your homework. Thank you. Um, Martha had written a song, and it was basically about a breakup. And it was mid-tempo, somewhere along the lines of a Velvet Underground song, da 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 da, bum 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 da 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 da. I was on a huge kick that week or that little period. Bill Nelson, that's the name I was trying to remember. I'd been listening to Panic in the World, and I think it's on Sunset Finish, or I think that's the name of the album. And he has Panic in the World, and it had just these two notes, dun 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 dun, over and over, relentlessly all the way through. And I thought, oh, that's so appealing. And I was looking for a place to put something like that. And Total Control or Complete Control was the next song up. And so we're playing it, and I'm thinking, I want to slow it down. And so I slowed it down. And once we got on that train, the more we slowed it down, the better it sounded. And it got to a point where Martha was a bit uncomfortable with it because she's way out there with no support, and there's nothing really holding her up. And there's these huge stops, where there's nothing. How do I know when to come back in? The other thing about it, which wasn't really intentional, but it turned out to be a thing, was that this is in the midst of high tempo new wave music and punk and all these up tempo things that were jumping up and down and pogoing and being aggressive. In the midst of all that, to come out with something that's blatantly in your face, ultra slow, was kind of pretty audacious. And
Yes.
and it's the reason it succeeded is because Martha could deliver it so heavily and so strongly and so dramatically. So I slowed it down, 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 and I pretty much did the arrangement where it stops and where it starts up again. And, basically in rock, that role doesn't have a chair. It does in films, it does in orchestral music and big band music. There's no job called arranger or orchestrator in a rock band, but that's basically what I did. And I changed the title and a couple little words.
I think the song was the template for their other songs on subsequent albums. I hear Take the L Out of Lover, but I think it's like a cousin to this song. I think this song that you created with Martha is sort of the genesis of the whole Motels sound.
I'm flattered, but no, the sound, that kind of melancholy, introspective thing, that is pure Martha. That is all her. I mean, what I did was implement it, amplify it. The Take the L actually was written by my brother and Carter, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Michael Goodrow, the bass player, co-wrote it with Marty. Pretty sure. I could be wrong. I know they did co-write some songs. So Martha didn't write that one at all. You picked that one out. So he did the same thing. He sort of spotted where Martha likes to go and wrote music and chords that were conducive to her being able to deliver it.
But I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's kind of that melancholy with Martha. Really, with that song, it taps into that sort of vein, which she does so well, and it's very emotive and sensual, and something that you did, like even so subtle, just changing the tempo can just change it from a completely different vibe, the meaning of the whole song.
Yeah,
So
it's much more kind of damaged when you do it at that tempo.
absolutely, absolutely. Were you surprised to hear that it became a top 10 hit in Australia? Because that was huge. There was a show over here called Countdown, and Molly Meldrum, or Ian Meldrum, who's like the music presenter, he's like a Dick Clark of
Uh-huh.
Australia, and he really pushed the Motels, and that song became a hit, and it gets played to this very day. It's in commercials. Were you surprised that this song is sort of keeps on ticking over?
Well, absolutely, just staggered. I mean, it seemed the absolutely the least likely to succeed, especially when it was new. Um, it was an anomaly, uh, and it wasn't much of a hit here. I was out of the band before the band went to Australia, so I never got to see that or get any feedback about how popular it was. EMI did send me a gold disc that's hanging on the wall in the next room. Um, so I had an inkling, and the royalty statements from the powers that be, the biggest numbers were always from Australia and New Zealand. So I was certainly aware that, it had a different position down under than it did here.
Yeah, and it did
But
okay in Europe, didn't it? France, it
fairly
hit the
well.
top
Yeah, a
20
number
or
of
something.
people, I don't know if it got that high, but it
Mm.
was popular enough that a number of people did cover versions of it. Anna Oxa and a couple of others.
Tina
Um,
Turner, of course.
yeah, well, she didn't really release that as a single. Anna
Mm.
Oxa did, and she sold quite a few records. Um, what surprised me is the second life that it's had in movies and commercials and various sync licenses. That actually makes me money. Certainly not enough to live on, but the
Yeah,
checks are nice to get,
it's nice. So,
It bought me, I bought an acoustic guitar with one of those checks, which is right over there.
as I said, it keeps on giving it. That's great. Why did
Mhm.
you leave the band? I've always wanted to know.
Ah, well, it's another in my story of being kicked out of the best bands in the business. First the Heartbreakers, then the Motels. It was a it was an outgrowth of Martha and I not getting along anymore,
Right.
and it got darker and darker.
Yeah.
There were a lot of misunderstandings, and then a lot of resentment. And instead of hashing things out and being upfront and forward about it, things simmered and percolated and festered, and it got really ugly. And it culminated in Martha going to the manager and saying, "I can't work with this guy another day. I feel
Mm.
horrible when he's in the room. I can't create. We got to get rid of him." The
Mm.
manager, of course, was like, "You can't be serious. It's the two of you that makes this work." And she said, "No, I'm serious. I don't care. I can't do it." And so I got called into a meeting, which I was hoping was a clear the air and let's get back to onto a good foot again. But no, it was a guillotine, and
Right.
so that's why I was out,
Right.
because we brought out the worst in each other. That's
Yeah.
that's how I,
Well.
that's how I've learned to live with it. In one sense, I got screwed, but in another sense, we were 20 somethings with a lot of baggage, both of us, and we just
Yes.
the worst in each other. And it's a
Yeah.
shame because if we had been a little more sophisticated or mature in how we dealt with things, and I include myself in that, the future looked really bright. The
Yeah.
way the band turned out, it certainly was nothing wrong with it. They had great success, but I believe that the direction we were going in would have been kind of more magnificent. You never know, but I had a picture of where we would go, and that spot between those three artists I mentioned would have been a sweet spot to occupy.
The direction they took with their subsequent albums, wouldn't have been the direction that you would have expected if you were in the band it would have gone?
At first, yes, I liked Apocalypso because it was outrageous, and as much as I had a hard time getting along with Tim McGovern, I absolutely admire and still do his musical imagination, and he can play anything. In music world, he's magnificent. He's a bit. We're sort of chalk and cheese. We don't really get along that well, but I admire him. And he made a magnificent album with Martha, and they rejected it absolutely. It said, this is too experimental. It's too wild. We need something a little closer to palatable for our audience. And so it wasn't working, and they were pouring money into it and losing money. And Capitol finally basically read them an ultimatum. Either we drop you, or you got to find a hit producer and produce a hit, because we've lost about all the money we're willing to lose. We need some income. Get us a hit. And the search led to Val Garay, who had just come off of Betty Davis Eyes as an engineer. And on the strength of that, he decided that he was a producer instead. And so he was like an auteur. He molded the band into his vision with great protest from the band members. I heard all about it, but they molded the band into a pop band and got the pop hits they were looking for. Only the Lonely, Suddenly Last Summer,
Yeah.
Whatever the third one was, it escapes me right now. And to the wider audience, they'd never heard a peep out of a band called the Motels. So that sounded good to them, pop record. They were perfectly happy with it. People who loved the artsy fartsy Motels were bitterly disappointed and dropped them. But that was a small group compared to the pop market at large. So no, I didn't like the pop direction, not at all.
Yeah. Capitol Records, was there a lot of control, or they just left you to your own devices?
You mean total control?
Pardon the pun.
Not at all. No.
Yeah.
The thing is, we were already making a strong showing. It looked like we knew what we were doing. Our songs and arrangements were already baked into the songs. We didn't need to be fixed or repaired by a producer. Carter was already aware of the band because the previous version had gotten a deal, or at least an offer of demo recordings at another label, and when the door swung open and the band members could see to the other side what they might be dealing with, they became it's an effect that happens. Little things that bother you about the direction of the band or whatever, you can stomach it on a small scale. But when it looks like it's going to be committed to vinyl and you're going to have to live with it forever, and that's going to be your identity, and you don't believe in it, then the sparks start flying. And that's just what happened. They went to do their demos, they recorded the demos, they argued, they broke up. But Carter knew who they were. And like so many other people, he had told her, save my number. I really would like to talk to you when you get it together. And some time went by, and it wasn't coming together. And I came along, and I had just, nothing but get it together itis, and imposed it on the band. And those two things, attracted Carter's attention. He started seeing us a lot in the clubs, and he was making offers well before the other labels were. So by the time somebody like, is it Richard Smith? John Smith, Dave Smith, I forget his name, at Elektra. By the time he was inviting us to come in and do demos, Capitol was ready to sign a contract. So no, they didn't tell us what to do. Carter believed in it. He said, just go in and play your set. You guys are ready. And we got in there and it was quiet and it was empty and it was microscopic and the vibe was gone and the mood was gone and we just collapsed, and so Carter at that point went, okay, well, it was worth a shot. And then he took over and we did it more in the traditional way where, we would play along, but it was really just for the drums. Then we add the bass and then da, 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 da. Uh, it took much longer than the Hollywood Stars recording because we did it that way.
Yeah.
But no, they didn't micromanage at all.
Mm.
At the opposite, absolutely polar opposite end of the spectrum, Val Garay was a micromanager and he had OCD and he was insecure and he had all these issues that made him really difficult. And to a man, everybody in the Motels will agree with me on that. I heard all about it, and I would visit from time to time because my brother stayed in the band, and he would say, "If you want to see us record, come on down to Record One." So I came down once or twice, and I saw the dynamic going on, and like, oof, I just couldn't wait to get out of there.
Yeah. Was he telling you lots of stories of how the things were going with the band? Or
Oh
did he
yeah,
just sort of keep that quiet?
oh no, we stayed in touch. It was difficult because on the
Mm.
one hand, I was kind of excited to see where he was going. In a way, he was my mole, reporting back from on a spy basis what's going on the inside. And
Mm.
and when I was still bitter, I kind of relished all the bad news. But then the reality set in, like, no, no, you want them to succeed. you know,
Yeah.
the the more people that love the Motels, the more your little piece will continue to have a life.
Have you ever crossed paths with Martha since you left the band?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I kind
All
of,
very cordial, friendly?
yeah, very friendly now. I mean, after I got over myself and got out of my own way, I went to a lot of shows and I would socialize after. And I had to go through my self introspection phase, and when I got to the place where I accepted that we brought out the worst in each other, and it's a shame, but she
Mm.
had to do what she had to do, and I had to be like I had to be. Um, she's not evil, and I had nobody's head that I wanted to remove, so it's just sort of a tragedy. And so, yeah,
Yeah.
I think I sent her something funny like a week ago, some picture that was almost an exact duplicate of a
Mm.
snapshot somebody took of us on tour. It was like it doesn't. It was taken on the set. It was a black and white picture taken on the set of The Creature from the Black Lagoon, and the guy who's playing the creature is on a break, and he's sitting in a chair in the full costume with the scales and the alligator head and everything. And the frail, the damsel, is like massaging his shoulders, and going like this. And coincidentally, there's a picture of Martha doing exactly that to our road manager from one of the tours. I mean, it's almost like posed. They're so similar. So I sent that to her and said, "Can you believe how similar this is?" And got a big laugh back. So yeah, we've stayed in touch. And my
If,
brother, uh, my brother
you,
keeps me posted.
absolutely. I mean, if there was an offer to do a reunion of sorts with that original band, would you be open to that? I know you're in the Hollywood Stars, but like a
Yeah,
one-off or something?
well, I've done a one-off. After Carter died, there was a memorial event at the Roxy,
Hmm.
and I don't know if it was because lack of availability of the current band members, or if they just wanted as many members of the original band that Carter knew to play a couple of songs uh, as part of the memorial. So I did that, and there was one other time where, at the last minute, Martha booked some shows during the holiday break, but it was too late. The guitar player had already gone to the East Coast, and he wasn't coming back. Would I would I do two shows with them? And because otherwise
Nice.
they can't play the shows, and the money would be nice. So I agreed. And it was fun. I didn't know a lot of their new songs, so we played all the old songs. They went over pretty well. But no, I've never been asked back since then. And um, at this point, you know, it would be like joining the Hollywood Stars. I don't know any of those songs.
Yeah, I
I've
get
heard
that.
them a lot of times, but I don't know how to play them. I don't even
Mm,
know what key they're in. It would be a lot of work.
yeah.
Um, Emotionally, I'd be willing to, but on a practical level, it would take a long time to rehearse up to the point where I could step in.
So when you left the Motels, tell the folks where did your musical journey take you then? Where did you played with a number of other bands?
I did. After the Motels, I started a Get Back on the Horse band with this cute little girl who sat on my lap at a Christmas party. In fact, a week or two before I got the axe from the Motels, there was a Christmas party for the Motels, and this little Lolita planted herself on my lap facing me and like was playing with my hair and being all cute and everything. And I thought, well, this is interesting. And uh, I think I think I went out with her a couple of times. And then after I was out of the band, I was in a tailspin for a while. And after a few months, I thought I should really start a band. And she was on me, like, well, start a band with me, start a band with me. And so I did. It was called The Flames. And to my dismay, she styled her vocal style totally after Martha. So it looked like a really cheap shot. I didn't tell her to do that. She did that. We were a good rock band, though. Just didn't click. I played an interesting set of gigs. I joined Leroy and the Lifters, which is just this random bunch of guys. Leroy used to be a background singer and dancer in the Tubes and other bands, and we played in the center of Flipper's Roller Discotheque Palace, which was a decadent kind of 70s thing. Uh, Even though it was now the 80s, it was a 70s vibe where it was a private club. So you could get as wrecked as you wanted to. All the drinks were at least doubles, if not triples. There was really no law enforcement in there. So everybody was loaded on one drug or another, sometimes multiple drugs. And we played in the center of this roller rink. And it was a blast. We were playing like Wooly Bully and uh, just fun songs. And because of the owner, incidentally, was Denny Cordell, co-owner Denny Cordell of Shelter Records. He named it after his friend Flipper and financed it, I think. Because of who he was and all his friends, he had all the expat Brits come in, or if they were passing through town, the musicians, they would always stop in at Flipper's. So we ended up jamming with the strangest people. We played Louie Louie with John Entwistle of The Who, and he did a great job, except I've never heard anyone play flamenco bass to Louie Louie instead of do 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 do.
It'd
It's
be
like
like,
yeah, do 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 do. It was
oh
hysterical,
wow,
and he was completely blasted drunk. I mean, and he still pulled it off, and in time, in tune. What a pro. What did I do after that? This is going to take a minute to think about. Um, a bunch of bands that rose and sank without a trace. Um,
any record company sort of bands that you were sort of like got record company interest, or you just sort
no,
of
no,
deliberately
no.
did a low key approach?
I didn't really have any ideas by that
Mm,
point. I had a master plan with the Motels, and then after that, I felt like I'd kind of shot my wad and didn't have a new plan.
yeah,
Um, so I just wanted to play. So I joined almost anything.
yeah.
One thing I joined, which also came from a phone call, was I did some sessions for Peter Noon when he was doing his 80s album called Tremblers.
Hmm.
I did some recordings of that.
So Hollywood stars, kind of, it sounds like by accident, sort of like sliding doors. You're kind of back into the rock fold.
The kind of mirror image of how I got into the Heartbreakers is the story of the Hollywood stars. You know, they already existed and they were created about the same time as I arrived in LA. Uh, so I got here Christmas 72. They were formed shortly after in 73. And it was a completely dreamed up concept by Kim Fowley. He thought of the idea, you know, there should really be a West Coast like reply to the New York Dolls. Yeah, so he conjured up this idea of the Hollywood stars. That would be a good answer. And he just picked out faces that looked like they would belong. And he would see people that looked the part in a club or in Desperation Alley between the two clubs. I forget if that ended up in our interview or not. We may have to go back and explain that. Anyway, he picked out people by their looks first and then asked if they could sing or play. And if they could, they said, good, I want you to be in my band. And then the whole thing was just going to be over in a year anyway. And so it was sort of like Spice Girls, you know, it was just assembled by an idea man.
Yep.
And it fell apart not long after. And the interesting thing is that a year or so later, the former members decided to get back together as a real band and give it another shot. And you know, that was an off and on again proposition for a long time. And I either don't know or forget what happened a few years ago that renewed interest in the band, but something happened. And a long lost album from the 70s was released. I think that's Sound City. The name of the album was Sound City, and it was recorded at Sound City in LA. And I think that triggered it. And they reformed. They did a live show at the Whiskey, and then that morphed into what we have now. And so it was a going concern when I showed up. And here's the second day. This is in the hallway of the second rehearsal I ever went to. I had a friend come and take pictures. So I was in there really quickly. Learned the songs, and the new version with George Keller and me in it seems to have more zip than the previous version, because we haven't been dragging this thing behind us for 47 years. You know, it's new to us.
Yeah. Were you aware of Hollywood stars in the day or while you were in the Motels? Any awareness?
You know,
Yeah.
I've seen the name on marquees. I don't think they played that many gigs, really. They had the worst luck with cancellations and changes of management, and every time they'd get a good thing going, it would explode or fall apart or fail.
Yep.
So I never saw them live. I knew the name, and I'd seen it on marquees. I thought I can't believe no one's done that before. You know, in all the time there's been rock bands in LA, I can't believe no one thought of the Hollywood stars before. It's so perfect. But no, other than knowing their name, never heard them, never saw them.
Yeah. And I guess that's like interesting, like if you come to the group with a completely fresh approach because you don't have history behind you with this band. So I guess that's something that the guys are tapping into you as part of the Sonics.
Yeah, they kind of got a shot of fresh blood.
Yeah.
And it's still, it did have that effect. It had an energizing effect.
Yeah.
And I've been told that, you know, at our rehearsals and the few gigs we've done so far, that we throw down quite a bit more force and energy than the previous incarnations did.
So you're playing gigs, got a tour lined up in America, and where does it go beyond there? Maybe touring the world, maybe Australia? I don't know. Tell me.
Well, I would hope Australia. I know that the songs that have been released are really getting a lot of play in Spain and Europe in general, but especially Spain. So after the CD is released properly, we'll see what kind of noise it makes. And if it seems like it's justified, we would go to Spain and Germany, Europe, whatever, wherever there's action. The vinyl version comes out in September. It's actually two different entities. The Rumbar Records offered to make the CD and to help promote it and do the packaging and everything, which they've done. Great job. Not interested in vinyl. The band was interested in vinyl, so they found another entity to run with that, and that comes out in September.
Yeah.
So what comes next? It's kind of wait and see.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, there's a positive response to the first single, which is Taxi Driver. It's a banger of a track.
It is.
It sounds like one of those songs that everyone's just engaged, and in fact, the whole album, everyone's just sounds like they're having a ball, having fun.
I like that song. When I first heard it, I thought it was a Beatles song. It sounded very Beatley to me. And I took a Beatle direction, and it was suggested, like, no, why don't you play it a little more in the Van Halen direction? So, oh, okay, I didn't know. So that's where that one came from. And yeah, it's a perfect little pop song, you know.
I think the wonders of the internet is that a lot of people have more exposure to information, and bands like the Hollywood Stars, like, to be quite frank, I wouldn't have heard about them in Australia if it's not for the internet, that you get exposed to these wonderful, great bands that sort of could have been bigger. Well, Jeff, it's been wonderful talking with you and going through this musical journey. Please, folks, check out the Hollywood Stars.
Yes, please.
The album Starstruck, which drops in about
June,
June
14.
Yep, absolutely.
Just without the reflection. There we go.
Absolutely. And Taxi Driver, which is up on YouTube.
Yeah,
it's had some
right there somewhere.
Absolutely. So if you like that classic rock, high energy power pop, bit of garage rock, it's got it all. It's really a great listen, and check that out. And hopefully it'll be accessible at all good record stores.
Yes. Well, listen, it's been great meeting you, Peter. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jeff. And this is Rock Daydream Nation. Thank you very much.
Ciao.
Cheers.
Thanks.